Have you been struggling to learn a new language? Do you always start with a lot of motivation, but then it slowly or quickly fades away? Or do you sometimes feel ashamed of not speaking perfectly the language you're learning? If this is the case, don't worry. I'm here for you. In this video, we will first talk about my experience learning Spanish as a third language. Then we'll see some very important things to take into consideration before learning a language or when learning a language. And finally, I will reveal you all the secrets to learning a new language. So if you want, you can directly go to the pods that interest you. There are timestamps in the description down below. But if you want to go for the full ride, welcome. My name is Camille and this channel is Breast Search, and I'm French, which I'm wearing a mariniere to make sure that you've understood that, and I'm talking out of a wine bottle, just in case I wasn't French enough in my way to speak or way to look. I'm also a human development facilitator, and I would really like to grow this channel to be a safe space where you can learn about topics that interest you mixed with the knowledge I have on psychology. So yeah, that's me. Oh, and if you like the video, make sure to subscribe to see more of these and like it. Let's start. So my name is Camille, I'm French, I'm 25, and it's been 4 years I live in Mexico now. I arrived here with the only basics of saying hola and gracias, and that was basically it. So within a year I became an English teacher, and then I got into a master's degree that is in human development. So it's basically humanistic psychotherapy that you can apply to whatever topic you'd like. And I've dedicated my thesis to how to apply psychotherapy to language teaching, more specifically to the teacher training for a language teacher. So how did I personally learn to speak Spanish? Well, I'm not gonna lie, I succeeded thanks to a whole lot of privilege. So I moved to Mexico in January of 2020, and I took 2.5 months of intensive Spanish classes. I was living the first few months with a Mexican family, and then I started dating a Mexican man who didn't speak neither French nor English, and I was basically bathing in the language all the time, which makes things really easier to learn. I did work really hard to learn the language, and I've learned the very painful, humbling process of patience when learning. But nonetheless, I know that quitting your life to go to another country to learn a new language is really not accessible to anyone. So this is why I created this video. So first, things to take into consideration before or when learning a new language. So first, you're gonna have to ask yourself, why do you want to learn this language? This part is very important, as simple as it is, because if you find the root of the endeavor, it really helps you not quit so fast. And it also can help you define which part of the language and the learning is most important to you. So do you want to learn it for fun? Do you want to learn it to travel? Do you want to learn it for work? Do you want to learn it for your partner? Or do you want to learn it to live in another country? All of those things will influence the way you actually learn the language. For example, if you want to learn for your partner or to travel, you may want to focus more on the speaking and understanding part, because this is what is going to help you in those situations. If you want to learn to work or to live in another country, the odds are you're going to have to be fluent in all aspects or focus on all aspects of the learning. Well, it actually depends on the country or the city. Berlin is very well known for not having to speak German to live there. But trust me, if you want to live in France, you're gonna have to learn to be fluent, or you're not gonna live in France. It just depends on the culture, the city you're in. And finally, if you want to learn for fun, it actually only depends on how demanding you are with yourself. I personally am extremely tough with myself and wouldn't accept less than perfection in each aspect. But that's not for everyone. Unfortunately, if you hear little kids screaming, it's not because I'm torturing them. It's because I live right next to a middle school and a primary school and a thing for babies. So sorry about that. I don't have another time to film this video, so it's going to have to be with children's screams. Thank you for your patience. Now that you have defined your why, you're going to have to take into consideration how far is the language you want to learn from your native language. Learning a language can be very easy or very tricky for the simple reasons that they can come from the same root or the same language family, or they can be complete opposite from the alphabet to the grammar, etc. So let me show you a map of language families. So as you can see, some languages have the same roots. Depending if the language you want to learn is in the same family, the process will be easier or harder. For example, I am French, and therefore learning Spanish was relatively easy because both languages come from Latin. The structure of the sentences are the same, the conjugation system is really similar, and most vocabulary has the same prefix or literally the same. For example, to sleep is said in the same way, dormir or dormir. Only the pronunciation changes. Now, when I was younger, I tried, not really hard to be fair, to learn German, and I never really managed it. One reason is because I didn't know all I know now about language learning, and also because I didn't really put a lot of effort in it. I was 13. I didn't really care about German. I regret it now. So if the language you are learning is not from the same family, keep in mind it might be harder or take longer. Now, there is a small exception to that: English. English is considered the easiest language to be learned. It is not a very complex language. This is why it's the most learned one around the world. Now, unfortunately, it is more difficult for any native English speaker to learn another language because they all are more complex and difficult than the one they grew up speaking. But it's not impossible, just a bit harder. So, being a native English speaker is not an excuse. The reason I am talking about this is for you to create realistic expectations about your learning process and pace. It's not to discourage you at all, but rather to know what you're getting into. Now, keep in mind that the learning curve looks pretty much like that with language. The beginning is very slow and you don't see much improvement because you are assimilating a lot of information. Then when you start putting all the pieces together, you have an exponential growth. And finally, you stabilize it by learning more and enriching your already good base of knowledge. When the language is not from the same family, the first assimilation part is longer. The trick is not to give up in the very slow first portion of learning. Now, one more thing I want you to take into consideration before we're getting into the very secretive secrets is the psychological theory of multiple intelligences. So basically, this guy, Sir Gardner, is a psychologist that has spent his life specializing in theories of development and who was a science of education teacher at Harvard. And his most known work is the multiple intelligences. The concept is very simple. There are 8 different types of intelligences. Everyone has a base in all of them, and most people naturally develop, let's say, some abilities to learn faster, 2 to 3 of them. It doesn't mean it's impossible to learn the other intelligences that you don't naturally fastly develop. It just means that it takes longer or it is harder. There are some very specific study cases where some people are prodigies at 2 or 3 or only 1, but they have a huge lack and it's almost impossible for them to learn another one. Or some people naturally develop more than 3 fast-ish, but they never become a specialist at any of them. They just have a more natural ability to learn faster. Let's say it that way. So, you have the following recognized existing intelligences. Bodily kinesthetic, which is basically a good coordination of mind and body. You will have it if sports comes easy to you or dancing, for example. Musical. when you are good with sounds, rhythms, pitches, tone when speaking, etc. You will have it if you have a good abilities at playing music, recognizing patterns in music, how high or low to sing, etc. Logical mathematical, which is the ability to quantify things, make hypotheses, understand mathematical concepts, etc. You're usually good at math or understanding logical concepts. Interpersonal, which is when you understand people, sense their feelings or motives. It does not necessarily mean you are a people person, but more that you're good at reading them. Intrapersonal. This is your ability to know what you're feeling, understand yourself, what you need or want, and why. Linguistic. This is a good ability with words, using them, understanding them, has ability with structures and understanding linguistic logic. This is the one people who learn languages really well and or fast and will be very good at writing or reading. Now, spiritual, which is about spatial, not spiritual. Sorry. Spatial, which is about visualizing the world, the 3D, etc. Typically, you can be a natural good photographer or driver or even pool player because you have a good understanding of space and angles in general. And finally, naturalist, which is the ability to understand living things and categorize them. Now, there is a debate on whether there is a ninth intelligence, and this is why I got mixed up, which is spiritual. He defines it as this ability to get in a spiritual state, which would be more of a meditative state, and it doesn't have to be through religion. It can be, for example, you can see a lot of music players, for example, who get in this sort of trance when they're playing the guitar or the piano. It's your natural ability to get into this meditative state. It is still debated. It has not been proven yet, but I'm just putting it out there if it interests you. I'm going to give you a little example, personal example of how it really works. So my three main intelligences are linguistic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal, which makes me a great therapist, great at learning languages, at writing those videos, and even at public speaking. I would say I'm pretty average at bodily kinesthetic stuff. I really love to dance though and to play sports, so I'm not the worst at it. I think I get it now how it works, but it took me a lot of work. I am really bad at logic and mathematical intelligence, and it's been a real problem in my life. I haven't found a way to solve it yet, but I'm working on it. And I'm really not that good at music intelligence, but I really love music, so I guess I'm not the worst at it either. Now, I have 0 naturalist ability, and my spatial intelligence is really not my strongest. I have improved a lot because I really love photography, so the 3D and the angles is getting better. But for example, I am the worst possible driver you would ever meet, so that can be a real problem in life. I had to pass twice my driving license. I think driving a standard like the one with levels was not the best idea for me, but it's really just the only option you have in France. And yeah, cars and I don't go well. I think it's a mix between that and bodily kinesthetic intelligence, because since I'm not really good at coordinating my movements and visualizing angles and 3D and know where I stand and am, driving a standard is really difficult. So yeah, I should try to drive an automatic. I will one day if I ever need to, but yeah. So now you can see it's not because you don't have a natural development of linguistic intelligence that you cannot learn a language. It just means it will go slower than the ones that have it. And don't be discouraged when you see someone learning it, because it's really just going down to an unfair advantage. I actually lied to you. I'm very sorry. We're not getting directly into the secrets. We're first going into some personal advice from me. I don't know if you could hear that. The buses are so loud in Mexico. Let's talk about the tools that you have at your disposal to learn a language. So you're going to have to ask yourself very realistically how much energy, time, and funds you're going to pour into your learning process. My advice would be to always get a teacher. It doesn't have to be a private teacher, it can be with a group. Each has their pros and cons. For example, if you go with a group, it will be more hours per week and it will probably be less expensive. But if you're a fast learner, you're going to get bored, and at the same time it will help you strengthen your basics and everything you're learning. And if you're slow, it can be really good because you have people that can be more of an example of what to do or how to do it or how to speak, etc. If you are going with a private teacher, it will be something made for you, so you'll probably learn faster, but you will have less hours per week, depending on your budget, of course. If you can have 4 hours of private class per week, please go ahead. And finding the right teacher can sometimes be like finding the right therapist. It can ask for a few trials, so don't be discouraged if the first or second one doesn't work for you. So it can take a little more time to get into it, but once you found the right teacher, it can be amazing. And the same can be said for the schools. I mean, sometimes a school uses a very specific type of educational system or tools or teachers. I mean, some people swear by learning by a native, and some people think it's better to learn with a non-native because they know better how to explain, etc. So just find the one that works best for you. If you're considering an app, I would say if you already live in the country that speaks the new language, it can be really helpful. Or if you're planning to move to this country and you want to arrive with some basis, if your goal is to learn perfectly or fluently a language and you're not living in the country, I really don't think the app is a good way to go, because it's not specified enough. It's not good enough yet. I do believe at some point we will have a good enough yet app for that, but not yet. And if you already have basis in a language and you just want not to lose your level or to keep improving little by little, an app is probably the best way you can go if you don't want to spend money on classes or you don't have access to classes. For example, my partner is a Spanish speaker. He's Mexican and he learned French in high school, and he has a really pretty decent level for someone who hasn't studied French since. And the app is the most amazing way for him to keep on with the pronunciation, to not forget the grammar and the vocabulary, etc., and to learn new things. And I should definitely speak a little bit more often French to him, but well, sometimes it's just easier in Spanish, I guess. So yeah, the app is either great or not. Once again, some people have a hard time with apps, and for some it's really easy, so you try it and see. Now, I could make a whole video about this, but if you cannot afford a teacher or you don't have the time for it and the apps aren't your thing, you can always try to learn by yourself a language. You can apart time during the week and, I don't know, research the most common grammar, verbs, vocabulary, sentences, and try to learn by yourself. You should definitely look up the structure of the sentences and why they exist. I mean, there is a possibility to learn a language on your own. It just asks for a lot more motivation, dedication, and I would say discipline in general, but it's not impossible. Now, whatever language or learning technique you choose, just remember that learning a language is not just about words or sounds or grammar and how difficult it is. Learning a language is learning a history. It's learning about people. It's learning about culture. It's understanding their mindset. It's putting yourself in their shoes. It's just discovering a whole new worldview. Studies has shown that the language you grew up listening to impacts your way to see the world and your perception, and the more languages you learn, the more you open up your views. So in the end, it's really a gift you're gifting to yourself by broadening your point of view and learning not only to speak with new people or in a different language, but yourself to grow as a new person and discover new things about yourself. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all waited for, the 5 secrets to learn a language. The first one, and don't be disappointed, please, because it's not really a secret, is to be consistent. I know everyone tells you need to be consistent, but it's true. The reason why everyone says it is because it's true. Learning comes with repetition. And if you're having a hard time with consistency, I would highly recommend to get some external obligations, kind of. So if you're learning a language on an app and a friend of yours does it too, let's say every week you need to show how many levels you got up to, or maybe you should go to a class that is at a certain hour at a certain days of the week so that you cannot miss it because you've already paid for it. I think the last resource would be to get any productivity book that will give you hundreds of thousands of tips on how to implement learning sessions into your routine, basically. The second one, and it's probably the most important one, is exposure. You need to try to be as much as possible exposed to the language. You can listen to music in the language. You can go to a conversational group in the language. You can watch your favorite series that you already know by heart in the language. Anything you want. You can learn children's book in the language. You can write poems if you like that. It doesn't matter. You just need to find a way to be as much as possible exposed to it, because that's the fastest way and the way to get the most accurate form of language into your brain. If you live in the country, obviously it's easier because you're exposed to it all the time. But for example, my brother-in-law, my partner's brother, learned French when he was in high school. He was going to French class, at school, and at the same time, all the time, he was listening to French, talking to himself in French, even listening to podcasts he didn't even understand, listening to music, watching movies in French. He was just exposing himself all the time. And everyone thinks, oh, but you're so good at learning a language, you have this linguistic intelligence. But it's also because he did everything he could in his power to learn as fast as possible. It's not only about your natural abilities, it's about all of the work you pour into. And if you talk about it with him, it actually didn't felt like work because he was doing things that he was enjoying. Which leads to our third secret: make it fun. I don't care why you are learning the language, you must do things that you enjoy in this language. You love music, listen to music from this culture. You love history, please learn about the history of the country. When I started to live in Mexico, I bought the middle school history books that they will give to middle schooler to learn about the history, or at least the history that is taught in the educational system, which is not always the real history. And it was a level that was easier than reading some very difficult book about history, but I was still learning about the culture, the country, what is taught, and about the language. If you like movies and entertainment, watch TV in the language. Just make it fun. Do things you already like to do, but just in this new, more interesting way that is learning and having fun at the same time, to something that will help you achieve your goal. And at the beginning, you should start with something that is familiar. As I said, a favorite movie, a favorite series, a favorite book. And little by little, you can go to things that are more difficult, like podcasts or very high level books, etc. My fourth secret, and I think this could actually help a lot of Mexicans that I know, is to not be ashamed of your level. Most of us, me included, gets very impatient with the process, but you need to accept where you're at and do with what you know. Speak up in class. If you meet someone new or someone that already speaks the language or that is learning to, speak with them. It doesn't matter. There are thousands of people all around the world right now who are working in their second or third language. And guess what? Their accent isn't perfect and their level isn't perfect, and they can still work. The main goal is to be able to communicate. My English level is not perfect and my English accent is not perfect. I still have a degree at English teaching. My Spanish level isn't perfect and my Spanish accent isn't perfect. I can still give therapy in Spanish. It actually can be better for me to give therapy in Spanish because I put this extra level of attention to what people are telling me, and I always ask more clarification about the words, the vocabulary they use, and the concepts they associate with it, so that I make sure that I understand perfectly their worldview and nothing gets lost in translations. And guess what? My patients actually feel extremely heard, but they also can process some of the things happening by explaining the concepts or the worldview that they have. So it's a win-win. So get out there and practice, and don't be ashamed of yourself, because to me, someone with an accent, as cheesy as it seems, is someone that is very courageous, someone that is willing to learn and is willing to start something from zero. So believe that for yourself, and please go practice without shame. You will find some amazing people, some amazing teachers on the way. You will probably have some of the most interesting conversations you'll ever have in your life. Now, my last secret, and I sincerely think it shouldn't be applied to just language learning, is to be kind, patient, and loving with yourself. When you're doing your homework or in class or speaking with someone, I want you to put extra attention to what you're telling yourself, to your inner dialogue. So, for example, if every time you make a mistake, which will happen a lot, I'm not gonna lie to you, you tell yourself some awful things like, you're so dumb, why couldn't you think faster? You're so slow, why did you make this mistake? Why did you make this dumb mistake? Why can't you do anything right? Guess what? You're not gonna find the will to move forward. If every time you make a mistake, someone, including yourself, is telling you you're dumb and you're not gonna make it, you're not gonna make it. So I would really like you to try this little exercise of rephrasing your inner dialogue. Let's say you're made a mistake in the tense and you will think naturally, ugh, I'm so dumb. Why do I say naturally? Because you cannot really control the thoughts that are coming, but you can control your reaction to it. So let's say you think, ugh, I'm so dumb. Then I want you to realize you're saying something negative about yourself and then change it. It doesn't matter what you said in the first place. You actively and purposefully change how you spoke to yourself. You can say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. It's fine that you're making the mistake with this tense. It will help you not make it in the future. It helps you understand better why you use this tense. Maybe it will help you focus more next time you do it. The idea is that you basically speak to yourself as if you were speaking to a child that you really, really love and that is learning something new for the first time. Obviously, you're not going to tell this child you really, really love that he's dumb and that he cannot achieve anything. You know this child is smart and that he can do it, and you know that most of the learning process comes from making mistakes. So every time they make a mistake, you cheer them, you help them get back on their feet and try again and make a mistake again until they finally learn it. You will never tell them that they're dumb after one mistake. So why would you say it to yourself? Learn to be as kind, gentle, patient, and loving with yourself as you would be with someone else. So these were my tips and secrets, and based on my experience learning a language and studying my master's degree on how to make people learn languages, I guess. It won't guarantee you to become fluent in a month or anything like that, but I think it can motivate you and help you not quit. And in my experience, not quitting is pretty much the best way to succeed at something. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more of these or want to help my little channel, please make sure to subscribe, like the video. I would love to hear in the comments if you think it was helpful. If you have other tips too, it would be amazing. And tell me if you want what kind of other content you would like me to see, you would like me to do. So yeah, keep in touch and take care. Bye.